ladies and gentlemen, from the Philippines, please welcome Alex Eala.
7 matches, 0 losses, and she almost couldn't finish the last one. That's where Alex Eala stands right now, heading into a 4th-round match that might be the most dangerous one of this entire winning streak. Comment Laban if you believe she pulls this one off too. Let's see how many of us actually believe it before it happens. Now here's exactly what's going on. 7 days ago, Alex Eala won her first ever WTA Tour title in Washington. Since then, she has landed in a new country, walked into a sold-out stadium in Toronto, survived one 3-set battle against Alicia Parks, and just hours ago, survived another against Caty McNally, 6-3, 5-7, 6-4. Except this last one wasn't just close, she hurt her foot in the 2nd set. Watch that match back, and you can see the exact moment things got uncomfortable. She was clearly favoring it, adjusting her movement, and yet somehow, in the middle of all that, she still found a way to close it out. Speaking right after the match, her words were simple. "I think I survived that one. It was so tough. It was down to details and a little bit of luck. Survived. That's the word she chose. Not dominated, not cruised. Survived." Here's why that word choice matters more than it might seem. Every single win on this streak so far has come from a position of relative physical freedom, even when the scorelines were tight. Tonight is different. If that foot is still bothering her even slightly, every single movement pattern that has carried her through 7 straight wins, the early takes on the ball, the explosive first step to close down short balls, the ability to change direction mid-rally, all of it becomes a question mark instead of a certainty. Tennis players talk about this constantly. It is rarely the big, obvious injury that ends a run. It's the small one that quietly changes 5% of every single shot, until an opponent who's paying attention starts finding it. Now, on almost no recovery time, she has to walk out and face Belinda Bencic. Let's talk about exactly who that is, because this is not a soft landing after a scare like that. Belinda Bencic is a 2020 Tokyo Olympic gold medalist, a former world number 4, a player who has reached the semifinals of the US Open, and, just this year, the semifinals of Wimbledon too. She has also pushed deep into the Australian Open on 3 separate occasions across her career, in 2016, 2023, and 2025. She has been at the very top of this sport for the better part of a decade, through injuries, through a maternity break of her own, through every kind of setback that usually ends a career, and she keeps finding her way back into the 2nd week of majors. She knows exactly how to make a young opponent's life difficult on a big stage, because she has been the young opponent making life difficult for someone else, more times than almost anyone left in this draw. And here's the twist that makes this match genuinely fascinating instead of just another tough draw. Bencic isn't walking in fresh either. Minutes before Eala finished off McNally, Bencic was still out on another court finishing her own marathon, a 3-hour, 24-minute battle against Taylor Townsend that could have gone either way. Her own words afterward, "It was a very big battle, of course. I felt very frustrated in the first set, but I'm happy that I never gave up." So think about what this match actually is now. 2 players walking in exhausted from 2 completely different kinds of battles. One nursing a foot that gave her trouble just hours earlier. One who just spent over 3 hours grinding out the toughest kind of win there is. Whoever handles that fatigue better tonight might matter more than whoever's the better player on paper. It's a strange kind of leveling. On paper, Bencic should have every physical advantage tonight. A decade of experience managing exactly this kind of recovery window. A body that has learned over years how to reset between matches. But 3 hours and 24 minutes is a brutal number no matter how experienced you are, and she has almost no more recovery time than Eala does before they're both back out there under the lights. This will also be the first time these two have ever played each other at tour level. No history, no head-to-head, nothing to fall back on except whatever each of them has left in the tank tonight. Here's the number that makes this whole run even harder to fully process. This is Alex Eala's 7th straight win, dating all the way back to that Washington title. Look at exactly who's in that streak, because it reads like a tour of the sport's toughest players. Zheng Qinwen, an Olympic gold medalist, erased from a set down. Leylah Fernandez, a defending champion, erased from 1-5 down in the second set. Elina Svitolina, a top 10 player, beaten for the second time this year on a completely different surface than the first. Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam champion, beaten in straight sets in the semi-final. Jessica Pegula, the world number 3, beaten in a rain-delayed final that had to finish the following day. Then, arriving in Toronto on almost no rest, Alicia Parks, avenging an Australian Open loss from earlier this year. And now McNally fought through on a leg that wasn't cooperating. 7 matches, across 2 countries, and every single one of them has demanded something completely different from her. Power from one opponent, composure from another, patience from a third. Tonight, against Bencic, it might simply demand whatever she has left physically, which is a different kind of test than anything on that list so far. Quick question, and I actually want your honest answer on this one. Do you think the injury scare is a real concern heading into tonight, or was that just one tough moment in an otherwise brutal 3-setter? Drop your take below. Here's what's quietly riding on all of this, beyond just one more win. Step back for a second and look at where this season actually started. 16 months ago, Alex Eala was ranked 140th in the world, a wildcard entrant most casual fans had never heard of. Tonight she walks out with a career-high ranking climbing toward the low 20s, a tour title already in hand, and a genuine chance at a second consecutive deep run at a WTA 1000 event, one of the biggest tiers of tournament outside the 4 Grand Slams. That climb didn't happen through one lucky week. It happened through exactly the kind of matches we're about to watch tonight, survived one after another, until surviving started looking a lot like winning. Eala's ranking is already climbing toward the low 20s, a fresh career high building on top of the career high she set just last week. Every round she survives in Toronto adds more weight to a season that's already rewriting what people thought was possible for her. A win tonight puts her into the quarterfinals of back-to-back different WTA 1000 and 500 level events, against some of the deepest fields on tour, without a single loss anywhere in between. And once again, this isn't happening quietly. Toronto has one of the largest Filipino populations of any city outside the Philippines itself, and every single match this week has turned into a home game in a country that isn't hers. Tickets for her matches have been disappearing within minutes of the schedule going up. Filipino flags have filled every court she's played on. After beating Parks, she turned to the crowd, in Tagalog, and thanked them directly for the energy they brought, saying it makes her incredibly proud to be Filipino every single time she feels it. That same energy will be waiting for her tonight, whether her foot cooperates or not. Thousands of people who rearranged their week around being in that building, who don't particularly care whether she's moving at 100% or 90%, because they didn't come here for a perfect performance. They came to watch one of their own refuse to stop trying. That kind of support does something real to a match like tonight's. When your legs are tired and your foot isn't quite right, and the opponent across the net is a former Olympic champion who just survived her own 3-hour war, a stadium full of people who drove hours and waited months for a ticket does not solve the problem for you. But it does make giving up considerably harder. Here's the honest tactical picture heading into tonight. Bencic is a supremely clean ball striker, someone who doesn't need to force much because her timing and court positioning do most of the work for her. She thrives on rhythm, on being allowed to settle into long exchanges where her experience naturally starts to show. Her game has never relied on overwhelming power the way some of Eala's other recent opponents have. It relies on precision, on hitting the same clean, flat shot over and over until an opponent cracks first, under the sheer consistency of it. That style has aged remarkably well across a decade on tour, precisely because it doesn't depend on athleticism the way a purely power-based game eventually does. If Eala is moving even slightly compromised because of that foot, Bencic is exactly the kind of opponent capable of finding that and exploiting it, point after point, without ever looking like she's trying particularly hard. She won't go for one big shot to test it. She'll simply extend rallies, move Eala corner to corner, and let a tired or compromised body slowly answer the question for her. Eala's counter to that has been the same all week. Take the ball early. Don't let a more experienced opponent dictate the pace of the rally. Redirect the pressure back before it ever fully builds. That formula has carried her through Zhang, through Fernandez, through Svitolina twice, through Osaka, through Pegula, through Parks, through McNally. Whether it holds up on a leg that isn't at 100% is the real question tonight. Worth knowing too, whoever wins tonight doesn't get an easy road afterward either. On the other side of this section of the draw sits a genuine murderer's row. Coco Gauff, Leylah Fernandez, Naomi Osaka, and Elena Rybakina are all alive in this same quarter, meaning a potential quarterfinal opponent could be almost any name in the top tier of the sport right now. Tonight isn't just about survival. It's about which direction the rest of this tournament even points. So here's where we land. A 21-year-old on the best winning streak of her career, playing through genuine physical discomfort, facing a former Olympic gold medalist who is equally exhausted from her own battle just hours earlier. No history between them. Everything still to be decided. If she wins tonight, this streak reaches 8 matches across 3 different countries against as tough a stretch of opposition as anyone on tour has faced this season. That would place her into the quarterfinals of consecutive WTA 1,500 level events without a single defeat anywhere in between, a level of consistency that very few players manage even once in a career, let alone twice back-to-back. If she doesn't, nobody honestly should call it a disappointment, not after everything her body has already been asked to do this week. 2 3-set battles in Toronto alone, on top of a rain-delayed final in Washington that stretched across 2 separate days. There is a version of this sport where a loss tonight would look exactly like a young player finally hitting a physical wall after an extraordinary stretch, and there would be nothing shameful in that. Careers are not built by never losing. They're built by how a player responds the next time out, and Eala has already shown, over and over this year, that her answer to a setback is rarely anything other than going straight back to work. Either way, remember what got her here. A country that had never had a woman crack the WTA Top 100 is now watching one of its own chase down her 8th straight win, foot injury and all, in a stadium she has turned into a second home, a full ocean away from the first one. A grandfather with a basket of tennis balls on a court in Pasig City could never have imagined this exact night, and yet somehow, everything about how she's playing through it, calm, composed, refusing to make excuses even when she has one available, traces directly back to lessons learned on that court, from him. One more thing before you go. Whatever happens tonight, come back and tell us how it felt watching it. That's genuinely the whole reason this channel exists. Not the views, not the algorithm, but the actual community that shows up, match after match, time zone after time zone, to go through this together. Comment your prediction. Subscribe if you want the result the second it's confirmed. And let's see if Alex Eala has one more escape left in her tonight.